Chosen one, pause your movement, still your scrolling thumb, and lean into this moment with the kind of focus you usually reserve for emergencies, because what is unfolding right now carries the weight of a spiritual turning point that refuses to compete with background noise. And I am not speaking to the distracted version of you, not the multitasking surface self, but to the core of you that has been quietly carrying battles no one applauded and wounds no one fully understood, because something happened recently in your life that did not look dramatic on the outside, did not trend, did not earn public recognition. Yet in the unseen layers of reality, it sent a shockwave through realms you have never physically seen. And I need you to understand that this was not about a grand gesture you staged or a speech you rehearsed. It was about a response that rose naturally from who you truly are. When pressure closed in and pain pressed hard against your spirit, a response so rare, so contrary to typical human instinct, that it caused heaven itself to slow its observation and mark the moment with intentional focus. Because while you thought you were simply getting through another hard day, another unfair conversation, another situation that stretched your patience to the edge, you were actually revealing the architecture of your soul, and what you revealed left an imprint so powerful that the highest ranks of spiritual authority took notice. Not out of casual curiosity, but out of strategic importance, because what you demonstrated is not common among those who have suffered what you have suffered, carried what you have carried, endured the silent disappointments, the private betrayals, the long seasons of feeling misunderstood, overlooked, or emotionally exhausted, and yet in the exact moment when your humanity had every logical argument to react with sharpness, withdrawal, retaliation, or cold detachment. Something deeper than instinct, deeper than emotion, deeper than wounded pride rose within you and chose a different path. And that choice, that single decision that may have looked like restraint, silence, patience, or undeserved kindness, was registered in the spiritual realm as a high-level act of light under pressure. And I need you to feel the magnitude of this, because most people survive hardship by hardening, by building emotional armor that keeps love out as much as it keeps pain out. But you did not become what hurt you. You did not mirror the darkness aimed at you. You did not let injury rewrite your identity. And in that refusal, in that quiet but fierce commitment to remain aligned with who you are at your best, instead of who circumstances tried to turn you into, you demonstrated something that is classified in the unseen realm as transcendent response, a category so rare that it automatically triggers elevated observation, because human behavior usually follows predictable emotional physics. Pain produces bitterness, betrayal produces revenge fantasies, injustice produces anger. And while those reactions are understandable, they are not transformative. They do not shift atmospheres. They do not interrupt cycles. But when a soul under real pressure answers injury with grace, hostility with restraint, and darkness with uncorrupted light, it creates a spiritual anomaly. And that anomaly is what brought focused attention to you, because your life is not being viewed as random struggle but as active formation. And the moment you chose the higher response, the one that cost you ego satisfaction but preserved your integrity, your spiritual covering intensified. Your file, so to speak, was elevated for review at a level of authority that does not get involved for minor matters. Because what you displayed was not passive goodness. It was active strength under emotional fire. And strength expressed through gentleness is one of the most powerful forces in existence, even if the world often mistakes it for weakness. And as your recent history was examined, it became clear that this was not an isolated incident but a pattern. A quiet consistency of choosing the harder right over the easier wrong, of maintaining decency when no applause followed, of extending understanding where resentment would have been easier. And this pattern revealed that you have been walking in the identity of a chosen soul long before you had language for it. Because being chosen is less about spotlight and more about unseen alignment, less about titles, and more about decisions made when no one is watching. And what stirred such deep recognition was that you kept choosing alignment even when it felt like nothing was changing. Even when your kindness seemed unnoticed. Even when your faith felt stretched thin. And there was a divine recognition that your responses were not performance, not strategy, not image management, but authentic expressions of your core nature. And authenticity under pressure is a signature of spiritual maturity that cannot be faked, because it shows up when it would be easier not to. And this recognition has already begun to alter the trajectory of your life in ways you may have sensed but not fully understood. Because when a soul proves it can carry light without being corrupted by darkness, it becomes trusted with greater influence, greater impact, greater responsibility. And that trust shows up as accelerated movement, unexpected openings, sudden clarity, and a strange, unshakable peace that does not match the intensity of your circumstances. And you have felt this, moments where anxiety should have dominated but calm settled instead, times when confusion should have ruled but insight surfaced quietly. Relationships or situations that drained you, slipping away without dramatic confrontation, as if your environment is being reorganized around who you are becoming rather than who you were. And this is not coincidence, this is alignment catching up with identity, because the version of you that chose grace under fire cannot remain confined to the same patterns, spaces, and dynamics that belong to the earlier, less awakened you. And there is also a stirring inside you, a sense that something significant is approaching. Not just hope, but anticipation with weight. And that inner knowing is your spirit sensing acceleration, because when character reaches a certain threshold, timelines shift, preparation seasons shorten, and opportunities that once seemed distant begin moving toward you with unusual speed. Not because you manipulated outcomes, but because your internal development now matches the level of external assignment that has been waiting. And with this acceleration comes protection that operates differently, because attacks aimed at destabilizing you lose their effectiveness when your identity is anchored. And you may have noticed that opposition does not land the way it used to, that negativity directed your way seems to dissolve or even backfire, not because you are untouched by life, but because your frequency has shifted. And your role in this season is not just personal elevation but overflow, because the grace you chose is becoming something others will feel in your presence. People standing where you once stood, wrestling with the same emotional crossroads, will find in you living evidence that another way is possible. And you will not need to preach or convince. Your lived integrity will speak. Your calm under pressure will model. Your refusal to become bitter will invite others to consider freedom. And this is part of why your journey has been so watched. Because your life is not only about you, it is about what can move through you, and the identity forming around you can be described as a warrior of light. Not a fighter fueled by rage, but a resilient soul who advances goodness without losing softness, who stands firm without becoming harsh, who confronts darkness by shining rather than absorbing it. And that kind of strength is rare, but it is what changes atmospheres, families, communities, and future generations. And as you move forward, understand that continued growth will still involve challenge, not as punishment, but as opportunity to deepen capacity. Because every time you choose alignment again, you reinforce who you are becoming, and you build spiritual credibility that opens doors no force can permanently shut. And you were meant to encounter this message in this season, when you needed confirmation that your quiet decisions carried weight, that your unseen victories were not wasted, that your choice to stay true to yourself in moments of pain was not foolish but powerful. And you did not know you were being observed when you made those choices. You were simply being real. And that is precisely why they mattered so much. Because authenticity under pressure reveals destiny. And your destiny is unfolding not through noise, but through depth. Not through spectacle, but through substance. And the same grace you extended is now circling back as favor. The same light you refused to extinguish is becoming your covering. And as you step into what is next, Carry this awareness not as pressure but as assurance that who you are becoming is seen, valued, and aligned with a purpose larger than any single struggle you have faced. And your journey from here is not random drift, but guided progression, shaped by the very quality that made heaven take notice. Your decision to remain light when darkness invited you to be otherwise. And now that you understand that your unseen choice marked a turning point in realms beyond your physical awareness, you need to grasp what shifts internally after a soul crosses that kind of invisible line. Because the moment you proved you would not let pain redesign your character, a restructuring began within you that goes deeper than mood, deeper than motivation, deeper than mindset. It began at the level of identity. And identity is the control center of destiny. Because behavior can be forced for a season, habits can be imitated for a while, but identity determines what you default to under pressure. And heaven's attention was not drawn to you because you performed well once. It was drawn because you revealed who you are when no reward is guaranteed, when no one is clapping, when obedience feels costly and emotionally inconvenient, and that revelation triggered a strengthening of your spiritual core that you may have felt as a quiet firmness, a new intolerance for things that once drained you, a subtle but growing clarity about what you will and will not allow in your life anymore. Not from arrogance, but from alignment, because when a soul matures through fire without losing tenderness, it gains authority without becoming harsh, and that authority changes how life responds to you. You are no longer merely reacting to events, you are influencing atmospheres simply by the state of your spirit. And this is why certain conversations feel different now. Certain environments feel heavier or lighter than before. Certain people either feel drawn to you or uncomfortable around you, because light that has been tested carries a frequency that exposes what is out of harmony. And not everyone is ready to sit comfortably in that exposure. So some will distance themselves without understanding why, while others will feel safe in your presence in a way they cannot explain. And both reactions are evidence of the same shift. You are no longer operating at the emotional level of survival. You are stepping into the spiritual level of influence. And influence born from integrity is far more powerful than influence built on image, because it does not collapse when pressure rises. And this is also why the battles you face now may look different than before. Less chaotic, perhaps, but more precise, more targeted. Because when you become a soul that refuses corruption, the strategy against you shifts from open attack to subtle distraction, from obvious conflict to quiet attempts to pull your focus away from who you are becoming. Because your greatest power right now is not dramatic action but sustained alignment, and the forces that once tried to break you through pain now try to blur you through busyness, overwhelm you with noise, scatter your energy across things that feel urgent but are not essential. Because if they cannot make you bitter, they will try to make you distracted. If they cannot darken your heart, they will try to dilute your focus. And this is why guarding your inner space in this season is crucial, not in fear, but in awareness. Because your attention is creative currency, and where you place it shapes what grows. And heaven's acceleration in your life is not meant to rush you into chaos, but to move you into precision. Where your yes becomes more intentional, and your no becomes more peaceful. Where you stop feeling guilty for outgrowing what once fit, and start recognizing that release is often protection in disguise. And the strange mixture you may feel lately, part anticipation, part stretching, part deep calm, is the sensation of transition. Like standing at the edge of a doorway between who you had to be to survive and who you are now ready to be to fulfill purpose. And thresholds always feel both sacred and uncomfortable, because they require you to let go of familiar versions of yourself, even the strong ones, to step into greater capacity. And greater capacity requires deeper trust. Not just trust that things will work out, but trust in who you have become through the process, because the same grace you offered others is now something you must offer yourself. You cannot step into expanded influence while secretly condemning yourself for past mistakes or rehearsing old guilt into undamba. That version of you has already done its job, learned its lessons, survived its storms, and now you are being invited to move forward without dragging old shame like an anchor behind you, because shame keeps you tied to identities heaven has already closed the book on. And the reason peace has been visiting you in moments that used to trigger anxiety is because your spirit is being taught to operate from rest instead of reaction, from rootedness instead of urgency. And rest is not passivity. Rest is power under control. It is the confidence that you do not have to force outcomes to be effective, because what is aligned flows with less strain than what is forced. And this is also why timing in your life may feel unusual. Things happening suddenly after long waiting, doors opening in clusters instead of one by one, insights coming in waves. Because acceleration often follows long seasons of hidden preparation, and you were being strengthened in private so you could be trusted in public, refined in obscurity so you would not be intoxicated by visibility. And now, movement begins to match maturity. And with that movement comes responsibility, not as pressure, but as purpose. Because the light in you is not decorative, it is functional. It is meant to illuminate paths for others who are still walking through fog, and you will notice people opening up to you about struggles they hide from most. Not because you have all the answers, but because your presence feels safe. And safety is born when someone has faced their own darkness and chosen not to become it. And this is part of your assignment in this season, to be living proof that gentleness and strength are not opposites, that forgiveness is not weakness, that choosing integrity when it costs you still leads somewhere meaningful. And as you carry this, understand that continued growth will not remove all challenges, but it will change how you experience them. Storms that once shook your identity will now shape your wisdom. Opposition that once wounded your worth will now refine your discernment. And through it all, you will notice an increasing sense that you are not walking alone. Even in quiet moments, a subtle companionship, a steadiness underneath emotions. Because when a soul proves trustworthy with light, support around that soul deepens. Guidance becomes more accessible, protection more active, not in a way that removes free will, but in a way that strengthens your ability to choose well again and again. And this is the cycle of elevation. Grace received, grace demonstrated, capacity increased, influence expanded, and you are in the middle of that cycle now. Not at the beginning anymore, not yet at the visible peak, but in the powerful middle where foundations are locking into place. And if you ever doubt whether your quiet decisions matter, remember that the turning point was not dramatic. It was a choice in a moment of pain to stay aligned with who you truly are. And that same kind of choice, repeated, is what continues to shape your path. And the future opening before you is not a random reward, but the natural outflow of a soul that chose light when darkness felt justified. And that is a kind of strength the universe itself makes room for. And as this unfolding reaches its deeper culmination, you must understand that what began as a single unseen decision has now matured into a spiritual trajectory that cannot be reversed by ordinary opposition. Because once a soul crosses from reaction into conscious alignment, from emotional impulse into anchored identity, the entire structure of their life begins reorganizing around purpose rather than survival, and you are no longer the person who merely endures storms. You are becoming the kind of presence that alters the atmosphere within them. And this is why your sensitivity has increased. Not fragility, but perception. You feel shifts faster. You discern motives quicker. You sense when something is off before evidence appears. And this is not anxiety. It is awareness sharpening as your spirit learns to read frequencies instead of just words. And with that awareness comes a calling into greater intentionality, because you are moving from accidental impact to deliberate influence. And heaven's confidence in you is not sentimental. It is based on demonstrated stability under pressure, and stability is what qualifies a person to carry weight without collapsing under it. So the opportunities, responsibilities, and connections entering your life are not random blessings tossed your way. They are assignments wrapped in favor, doors that open because your character can now sustain what lies on the other side. And this is why timing has felt mysterious. Delays that once frustrated you now reveal themselves as protection. Pauses that felt like neglect were actually preparation. Because if certain doors had opened earlier, you would have stepped through with a version of yourself still seeking validation, still easily wounded, still tempted to prove rather than simply be. But now you walk differently, less desperate to be seen, more anchored in knowing who you are. And that internal shift changes how external success interacts with you. It no longer defines you. It flows through you. And this is crucial because influence without identity creates collapse, but influence flowing from identity creates legacy. And legacy is not built through loud moments but through consistent alignment carried over time. And the grace you chose in pain is becoming the signature of how you move through the world. People will not always remember your exact words, but they will remember how safe they felt, how understood, how strangely strengthened after encountering you. And that is the mark of a life operating from light rather than ego. And understand this clearly. The same quality that impressed heaven will continue to be invited forward, not to exhaust you, but to expand you. Because every new level brings new invitations to respond from who you truly are, rather than who circumstances try to provoke. And you will notice that triggers that once hooked you now lose power faster. Old emotional loops breaking more quickly. Recovery from disappointment becoming swifter. Not because life is easier, but because your inner ground is firmer. And firmness born from humility is unshakable. And as this season unfolds, you may find yourself drawn toward purpose in ways that feel both natural and slightly intimidating. Nudges to step up, speak, create, lead, initiate, or support in ways that stretch your comfort zone. And that stretch is confirmation of growth, because the version of you that chose grace under fire unlocked capacity you had not yet fully accessed. And heaven does not reveal capacity just to admire it. It reveals it to release it into the world. And you will not be sent alone into what is ahead. Provision follows assignment. Guidance meets obedience. Strength rises with responsibility. And the peace that has been quietly stabilizing you will deepen into confidence. Not loud self-assurance, but calm certainty that you are where you are meant to be, even when outcomes are still forming. And there will be moments when you look back at who you were before that key decision, before that response that marked the shift. And you will realize that the person you used to be would not recognize the steadiness you now carry. And that realization will humble you, because growth that happens through surrender rather than force creates gratitude instead of pride. And this is the posture that keeps you aligned as elevation continues. Remembering that everything flows from grace, not from personal perfection. And as you move forward, the message woven into your journey becomes clear. Light is strongest when it refuses to dim in darkness. Love is most powerful when it remains intact under pressure. And identity anchored in truth cannot be rewritten by circumstance. And you are living proof of this. A soul who did not know they were being watched when they chose the higher way, yet whose authenticity under fire became a turning point in unseen realms. And now your path carries momentum shaped by that moment. Your future responding to a version of you forged in quiet integrity. And you do not have to strive to hold this position. You simply continue being who you have proven yourself to be, choosing alignment, one decision at a time, trusting that every step taken in light multiplies beyond what your eyes can measure. And as this chapter closes and the next opens, carry this final truth deep within you. You were never overlooked. Your unseen battles were never wasted. Your gentle strength was never insignificant. And the same presence that watched you choose grace is still guiding your unfolding, turning your quiet faithfulness into visible purpose, your hidden endurance into open doors, and your consistent light into a path that not only leads you forward but illuminates the way for many who will walk behind you. Because this was never just about surviving the dark. It was about becoming the kind of light that darkness cannot overcome.